So let me take you through the house and my recommendations for creating lots of positivity and a better indoor environment for everybody to live in the house today. Starting from the front door, what's really important is the welcome home. Make sure that outside of your front door, the whole area, the whole environment looks amazing. If it doesn't seem like it's welcoming, and it doesn't give you the lift where you feel like your heart is rising in your chest and your spirit soaring, then unfortunately you need to do a bit of work on the exterior of the house. So have a look around, make sure that you've plenty of traffic space left outside of your front door. Don't block the front door by parking a car in the way. It just never looks good, and it impedes the traffic flow and the energy flow trying to get in through the front door, which is the mouth of the home. Make sure that you have beautiful flowers nearby, that your pathway is actually safe, because never forget health and safety. It's really important. And of course, when it comes to the front door, everything should be shining, from the brassware to the lock and key working properly, the hinges being oiled, and ensure that nobody slams the door every time they come in and out, because that obviously creates a different vibration within the home as well. Once you enter the home, it's really nice to get it's very important to get the right impression, and it's not just the impression of what you see, it's actually what you sense, it's what you feel. So don't forget, the acoustics need to be right. Too much echo and it feels cold and unwelcoming. Make sure that you have rugs to soften the acoustics. Perhaps you need some fabric like a blind on the windows, or even a door curtain that can help to soften things. And it's really important to put down something really sensible, which is a really good doormat at the front door. And everyone who enters the house, once they wipe their feet on that doormat, they shouldn't be traipsing all that dirt throughout the house, where it just means you're doing so much more work when you needn't bother. So make sure that you have as much in the way of colour, pattern or texture as the space will allow you to have, because I do think that it should be a reflection of your personality, an expression of yourself, because after all, the house in fact is the mansion of the soul. It's not just your outer skin, it's actually where your soul resides. It's really great if you have something in the way of furniture, because furnishings can actually make a space look bigger. Sometimes emptying a space can just make it look just completely impersonal and unwelcome. So have a look and see, when you enter your home tonight, do you have that impression? The impression that the space looks right, that it feels right, that there is a nice balance between texture, colour and pattern, and that there aren't too many furnishings and yet there are enough as well. It's great to see fresh flowers in the hallway. I do think that it's lovely to have the scent from the flowers, and you're bringing nature into a room that very often doesn't have a beautiful view or natural daylight. Often our front doors have glass within them that tends to cut the light and it obscures the view from outside. So it's really nice to introduce some home plants, for instance house plants, things like giant peace lily, which require very little maintenance and they don't like direct sunlight. Orchids, if the temperature of the space is right. And try and ensure that the temperature is at an ambient level at all times. And don't forget, a space needs to sound right, it needs to look right, it needs to smell right. So don't go in for artificial air fresheners. I never think that they work. Just a beautiful bag of dried lavender can scent a space gorgeously. And scented candles are lovely, but make sure that they're lit and they're supervised at all times while lit, and that they're actually lit in proper containers where the surface of the furniture that you place them on is actually protected from damage. The other thing is that some of those candles also contain chemicals which can irritate the lungs and the skin. So ensure that you're buying natural candles that are made from natural beeswax and have beautiful scents made from natural oils. It's really nice that you can also come to a space that is balanced in terms of energy. I always recommend that people leave out bowls of plain table salt. Open ceramic bowls left on surfaces, one in each room in the house, will help to cleanse the air, cleanse the environment and cleanse the energy within that space as well. And it also helps to balance the yin and yang energies of that space. It's a really good way of creating a lovely feeling within the home. When it comes to what the do's and don'ts are of a hallway, it's better if you don't see the stairs directly when you open the front door in feng shui terms. And it's even better if the stairs are not too close to the front door. So try and avoid designing a home that the stairs are too obvious to the relationship with the door. It's it's really important that they're off to the left or to the right, or that perhaps the back of the stairs is what you see and not the front, or the side of the stairs as well. That's absolutely acceptable. So I think it's also important that you remember that it sounds like elephants are living in the house if you don't have a stair carpet. So better to have that, because it also helps people not to slip and to fall. It's a really dangerous area. Staircase and a kitchen are classed as two of the most dangerous areas in the home. So ensure there are no trip hazards, and make sure that people can see the staircase very easily, that it is visible to those who are going up and down staircases, particularly the elderly and the young. I always advise that sharp corners are dressed with a corner moulding, which is a timber corner moulding. You can paint it the same colour as your walls, but it will help to disguise the sharp corners. It'll help stop the cutting energy that a sharp corner will create within the home. And it also ensures that if somebody tripped and fell and their head were to hit that sharp corner, that the steel bead that's concealed behind the plaster won't do any damage to them. So it's just a simple health and safety and feng shui friendly way to address an exposed corner in a house. Also, it's great with a sitting room. You know, sitting rooms pertain to financial investments and business interests. So a sitting room is actually a very important room in the house. It's the area where, you know, most social integration takes place. It's an area where conversation should happen, and it's an area where television viewing also occurs. But it shouldn't be designed in such a way as to put the TV at the heart of the room and in the power seat of the room. Ensure that you set up the seating without including the television within in the scheme of things. Set up the seating first so that you have proper conversation. Don't set it up where the furniture is pushed back against the walls, because it looks like a furniture showroom if you do that. And it just means that you're shouting from one side of the room to the other in order to speak to somebody. A room like that should be set up in an intimate way with lots of atmosphere. Low lamps and low lighting are really good for creating ambience. And of course, it's great again to see a fireplace or a focal point. So if you have a beautiful view of the outdoors, you know, make sure that you include a plant in the room to try and bring in the relationship between the indoors and the outdoors, and ensure that you run your floor covering in such a way that it also runs outside of the room if you have doors to the outside. I think it's a really good way of including the indoors and the outdoors. There's a great relationship in the room between ourselves and our fireplaces. You know, for thousands of years we've relied on fire as being the gathering influence in the room. So it's a really nice focal point to have. But don't put a mirror above the fireplace. I think it makes the room far too formal. And I also think that most mantel shelves are too high for us to be able to see our reflection, you know, properly in the mirror, unless you're very, very tall. So use the opportunity of the chimney breast to display a beautiful piece of art, and that will actually make the room really come together. It makes it look as though you're cultured, you're interesting, you're artistic and creative, and it also gives artists a great opportunity to make a living. So remember that the piece should be hung at the right height, it should be framed accordingly, and that should actually be tied in with the rug in the room, the lampshades, and the other art that's on the walls, and obviously any object art that you have to display in the room, such as sculpture and objects that you may have gathered from your travels around the world. So, you know, make the space look so much more interesting and three-dimensional, because after all, as human beings, we're multi-dimensional creatures, and it's great to have spaces that are multi-dimensional and multi-sensory as well. Going through to the dining area, it's really good to make sure that you focus purely on the dining table itself. The table centre or decorations along the table centre itself are, you know, the best way to make the most of your table. It really should be all about the food, it should be all about the conversation, it should be all about enjoying the time at the table as well. And make sure that the space itself is really, you know, congruous. It's a space really that's all about good food, good conversation, fine dining, you know, enjoying a few nice drinks. And actually any furniture that's in that space, I always recommend that it be low and that it provides you with surface space in which to put lamps and to set up other, you know, things like a fruit bowl and stuff that's very convenient for diners to use as well. Make sure that the furniture that's within the dining space actually services the needs of the table. It should store all the delf and all the cutlery and all the glassware. And it should be an area that is easy to function. You know, running from the table to that cabinet should be a short distance. It shouldn't be a long drag to bring the stuff to the table from the kitchen either, because don't forget that when you're carrying food, safety needs to be adhered to. You need to be careful about the fact that that's so easy for something to fall off and destroy the floor below, or to stain the tablecloth and ruin what could be a gorgeous display. So make sure that when you're carrying food to the table that maybe you have somewhere to place it that can be convenient for you to serve it to the table. And again, that's why I recommend that a sideboard or a buffet or some kind of dresser should have a tabletop surface in which to put food down on. Also, I do find that lighting in the dining space itself, it should be all about what is happening at the table again. Make sure that lighting is hung at the right height and that it doesn't blind the diners, and it needs to also, make people look even better at night. So a soft glow is nicer to come from a dining lamp than it is from, we say a place where you'll be tasking or a reading light. It doesn't need to be as bright as that. Going to the kitchen, I think it's really important that the cooker is the first thing that you sight when you're designing a kitchen. The placement of the hob itself is what's so important. And in feng shui terms, actually, the hob is what gives us our nutrition. So anything that you boil, stew, steam, fry or poach that you do on the hob itself is actually what gives you your nutrition. It's not what happens under the grill or in the oven. So interestingly enough, it's also the place that most accidents occur and obviously most burns happen. So it needs to be, safely sited where you have a solid wall at the back of it and a proper splashback. It shouldn't be sited in the island unit, and it should not be sited too close to a door either. Make sure that all traffic areas around that are safe and that you don't have situations where maybe you're opening doors from an island unit or from the oven door itself, and then those two clash. So you need at least 900 millilitres between the outer perimeter units in a kitchen and the island unit itself. Also, it's really important to have surface space either side of a hob top. So you should have a minimum of 600 millimetres, that's 2 foot, between the sides of where the hob is located and the next area along. That ensures that if you're taking things to and from the hob, that you're able to get them onto the hob safely, especially when you already have saucepans on top of the hob. And it's really good that you have some place to put things down before you put things into the pots on the stove. So going on to the next thing, when you're designing a kitchen, once you've sited your hob, the next thing to site is the sink. And the sink can be sited against a solid wall or preferably, in an area where it is not on an island unit. You can have it under a window if you like, but I like to have the sink actually wherever it's most convenient to create what's known as the work triangle, so that the hob, the sink and the fridge are easily used and easily functional. So that's what's known as the work triangle. And ensure that your tap never faces the sink. It should never be positioned opposite the hob, because if you site a sink and hob opposite one another, then you create discord in the home. And that's to do with the problem between fire and water. The stove represents fire and the sink represents water, and fire and water don't mix. So don't place them opposite one another and don't place the tap towards the hob. It's really important not to do that. I always say to people that we should look at all the different appliances that are available to us today. Fridges can have antibacterial qualities. They can also have stay fresh drawers in them. They're drawers that allow food to stay fresh for up to a month. You can also have warming drawers that warm plates and bowls and keep bread warm actually before you serve it on the table. You can have fridge drawers and dishwasher drawers. That's really handy if you're stuck for how you want to lay out your kitchen, and especially if it's a very compact kitchen, where to site things. And don't forget that mid-height is always a height that's very usable, user-friendly and very handy. So mid-height is a better height to put in a kitchen rather than any old items that are far too tall where you can't reach the upper height shelves. I think we'll stop there. How is that doing so far?